Hello, my name is John Brisson, author of Fix Your Gut and Health Coach. Welcome to the Fix Your Gut YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the effects of the diet on the microbiome, prebiotic supplements, fermented foods, and probiotic supplements. And the differences between it. And I get this question a lot. A lot of people ask me what's the difference between a prebiotic, what's the difference between a probiotic. So before we start, let's define some terms, and then I'm going to talk about the differences of those four things and how they are similar too in a lot of ways as well. And, you know, later different videos, I'm going to discuss the different prebiotics, some probiotic strains and probiotic supplements that I like. I've already talked about 2FL, the human milk oligosaccharide. I've already done a video on that, which the main supplement on the market right now is Hologos. But I'm going to talk about, so let's get some terms down first. So the microbiome is the biome of, you know, different parts of your body. Right now we're going to talk about the digestive microbiome, the microbiome that goes from your oral cavity, which is your mouth, through your digestive tract, your stomach, all the way down to your anus. Now, the microbiome is made up of microorganisms that live in this biome or this place, so within your digestive tract. So you have bacteria, archaea, viruses, yeast, and parasites. And they make up your microbiome. Okay? So you also have prebiotics, which are things that you ingest that your microbiome is able to ingest or ferment and is able to utilize. Then you have probiotics. Now, probiotics are good microorganisms, or what we think are good. Sometimes they can be opportunistic. We'll talk about that when we get to probiotics. But they tend to be ones that tend to have a commensal relationship with us. They tend to help us out. They tend to, you know, be more pros than cons, where you also have more opportunistic strains like H. pylori, for example, or E. coli, different strains of E. coli, like hemorrhagic E. coli, hemorrhagic E. coli. So you'll have different, you know, you have strains that are good, like Bifidobacterium longum, which tend to be probiotic, they tend to be more helpful. And you have strains that tend to cause more infections, like Staphylococcus aureus, tend to be more opportunistic. So let's first start with diet. Now, with our diet, I'm pretty sure that a lot of y'all have heard of the low FODMAP diet, which is usually prescribed for people dealing with SIBO. FODMAP stands for fermentable oligo, di, monosaccharides, and polyols. These are things that are found in our diets that microorganisms within our gut can break down. For example, bacteria like to ferment a lot of these saccharides or carbohydrates or sugars and polyols, and doing so, depending on the microorganism, if they produce more hydrogen or more methane or hydrogen sulfide, it can produce more bloating and more gastrointestinal symptoms. So a lot of the microbes that we eat through our diet, you know, the different ones will feed off of different things. For example, Akkermansia mucophilia, which is the bacteria that helps line the mucosal barrier throughout the whole entire digestive tract and helps it's kind of like the tender, like kind of like tends the garden of your microbiome, of the mucosal barrier, kind of keeps it in shape. It likes pomegranates, for example. So if you eat pomegranates or take a pomegranate supplement or drink a lot of pomegranate juice, people who tend to do that, their Akkermansia seems to increase. Okay, so there are you know, another example is Bifidobacterium. There are Russian studies that show that the ingestion of collagen, because not everything is a carbohydrate that bacteria eat. Bacteria can also digest and ferment protein. And Candida, for example, Candida likes sugar, but it can also ferment protein too in some cases. So there's different, you know, different organisms like different things, and they don't like different things, or they're unable to break different things. It's like polyols, you know, some bacteria like Streptococcus mutans that lives on your teeth, it generally does not like xylitol. It can't really do anything with it. So that's why xylitol is good for breaking up biofilm. It's in the mouth. You use it a little bit in toothpaste, a little bit in chewing gum, or other organisms throughout the digestive tract can ferment xylitol. So if you eat xylitol in a baked good, for someone like SIBO, for example, they can get diarrhea and bloating because a lot of hydrogen is being produced. So within your diet, there are many different types of prebiotics that are in these foods. For example, cabbage and Jerusalem artichokes will have the prebiotic inulin, which is fructooligosaccharide. It's one of those FODMAPs, oligosaccharide that we talked about earlier, that a lot of bacteria can break down and ferment. And for a lot of people, FOS as a prebiotic can cause a lot of gas, bloating. That's why I generally don't recommend it or inulin in supplemental form, but most people in food form, for example, eating Jerusalem artichokes or cruciferous vegetables in moderation, they're able to tolerate that inulin better. Or onions or garlic. But not everybody. Some people end up having issues with it. But, you know, for my example, I can't tolerate inulin in a lot of the bars that you see that have it really cheap, because it's very cheap added in there. FOSs, you'll see them in Kind bars, for example. That actually gives me a little bit of gas. But I can eat all the Brussels sprouts and broccoli, or I can eat all the Jerusalem artichoke that I want and have no issue. So some people are able to tolerate the prebiotics that are in food better. Some people aren't, because there might be other issues with the food. For example, the sulfur and the onions you might react to, even though the inulin you might do positive with. Or some people might do better or react more negatively when these prebiotics are isolated. Another example is black beans. Black beans contain galacto-oligosaccharides, which is also found in milk and dairy. And it's another FODMAP. It's an oligosaccharide. So these are things that bacteria can ingest. And if we have a good microbiome, our bacteria and our own body are able to, most of the time, digest and break down these substances, so they don't feed the more opportunistic bacteria, which tend to ferment it and produce more gases that bloat, like hydrogen, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. Or most of your probiotic bacteria, they produce more carbon dioxide and nitrogen within their fermentation, and that is utilized by the body better than the other gases. So there's many different types of prebiotics which feed a wide variety of microorganisms. Those include FOS, or fructooligosaccharides, like I mentioned earlier. Mannan oligosaccharide, you'll see that in an S-Boulardii supplement because it does really good with S-Boulardii as a prebiotic for it. Xylo-oligosaccharide, which are from xylans. Arabinogalactan. Some people use the synthetic sugar lactulose as a prebiotic. I generally don't recommend that one as much, but it can be used. 2FL and tetrahydrose, the human milk oligosaccharides. Some people do very well with that supplement, like Hologos, or galacto-oligosaccharides I mentioned earlier. They're GOS supplements. So there's many different types of prebiotic supplements. Collagen is one too. Even though it's a protein source, bifidobacterium can ferment it. So yeah, there are many different types of prebiotics which feed the bacteria or the microorganisms within your gut. And you can have prebiotics in a supplement form. Like you can have a jar of GOS, Galactimune by Claire Labs, or you can get it in food form when you eat black beans, for example, or drink milk. You're getting in galacto-oligosaccharides. You're getting the prebiotic in the food. There's also fermented foods, which are kind of like a combination of both probiotics, hopefully, and prebiotics. For example, sauerkraut. Sauerkraut usually has the bacteria Lactobacillus plantarum, which is known as a probiotic bacteria for most people. Some people with Th1 dominance, for myself. It may cause a little bit of inflammation, like joint pain and arthritis if they ingest it, but for people who have histamine intolerance or allergen issues, Lactobacillus plantarum actually might reduce that. So it depends on the person. But sauerkraut in and of itself, like majority of the fermentable foods, and the reason why they're fermentable is because they contain these FODMAPs in the food. So, you know, hopefully depending on what you ingest, whether it's yogurt, sour cream, kvass, kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented vegetables, you know, they will have different FODMAPs within them and prebiotics, and they will have different probiotics, hopefully, in them too as well. And I have many different blogs on Fix Your Gut that go and talk about the differences, the positives and negatives of kefir or yogurt or kombucha. But yeah, so fermented foods would contain both live microorganisms, hopefully, or probiotic, and would contain fermentable prebiotics. And so now we get to probiotics. Probiotics are hopefully good commensal bacteria, and I put good in quotation marks, that hopefully when a person takes them, they either colonize, which there are evidence that they may not, and it might just be that any positive benefit that someone gets from taking said bacteria, or the immune reactions that happen when a person ingests these microorganisms, or like I said, that it's just the immune reaction, and it could be hopefully positive, and for some people it's negative. So there's some strains of probiotics that I tend to think that are more opportunistic and less likely to be probiotic. They are the bacteria Bacillus and the bacteria Clostridium butyricinum. Now, I'm not saying that people who've taken these probiotic supplements with those probiotics in them, I'm not saying that they haven't helped people, because they have, but they have also harmed people that I've coached, and they're more harmful in the medical literature and more difficult to get rid of. For example, Bacillus and Clostridium both form endospores, which are these very hard coatings, which can make them strongly antibacterial and antimicrobial resistant. You also have more known probiotics like lactobacillus, but there are cases of medical literature lactobacillus can cause infections, but most of the time it's easily disposed by antibiotics. And in some people, they can get lactobacillus overgrowth too. If you have SIBO, if you're taking any probiotic, if you're constipated and you're taking these probiotics, they may actually colonize. And when that's the case, they colonize your small intestine and not your colon, where a majority of them are supposed to be. A lot of lactobacillus strains are actually supposed to be in the stomach and the duodenum, but like lactobacillus plantarum, for example, it's supposed to colonize the colon. It's one of the few lactobacilli that live in the colon. But in another strain of popular probiotic bacteria is Bifidobacterium. Now, there are no infection cases, to my knowledge, of Bifidobacterium longum. It actually might be one of the most benign, but that being said, there have been some people who supplemented where it has not worked out for them. It's also probiotic yeast, like Saccharomyces boulardii, that we usually recommend for people dealing with Clostridium difficile issues, C. diff dysbiosis. It seems to work very well in protecting that if someone's hospitalized and they're taking many types of antibiotics and they're afraid that they may contract C. diff in the hospital. There's also another class of probiotic supplements that are bacteriophages, which a phage is a virus that infects a bacteria or an archaea and can end up killing it. I don't really recommend bacteriophages yet because there hasn't been enough clinical trials in their efficacy for humans. That being said, though, if I had an E. coli dysbiosis that was not being taken care of by any natural mean, I would definitely look into the use of using bacteriophages. I'm not against their use when needed, and I guess I finally need to get around to writing about them. But again, it is a virus and it does affect the bacteria and the archaea, and that could technically go wrong. As well as, I don't know, like I think one of the phages, I think it's Inoviridae, has been shown actually to make biofilms worse. Like bacteria are able to it actually makes the biofilm production, especially of Klebsiella pneumoniae and pneumonia cystic fibrosis, actually makes it to be worse. So again, that's why we need more studies for bacteriophages. But again, they have shown there's a lot of clinical efficacy of it working very well for E. coli. And there has been stories of people nothing being able to touch the infections they have, and they take bacteriophages and they come out okay. So yeah, I'm not going to say that it's like Bacillus. Other than Prescriptive Cyst, I'm not going to say that there isn't merit of their supplements, like Megaspore or Just Thrive, that it hasn't helped people, because it has. But it also has made people ill too. And I'd actually say, for example, that a recommended probiotic like Gut Pro or Carl Saden's Elixia, in my opinion, is safer because you can eradicate those easier if it goes wrong, compared to Bacillus that is found in Megaspore, like Bacillus licheniformis. But just to go briefly over everything, to tie everything back up, a prebiotic is what the microorganisms in your digestive tract, or if you put a prebiotic on your skin, it's what microorganisms eat. A probiotic is hopefully a good microorganism that you ingest. That's why it's pro. We hope that it will help the host, which is you. When you eat it, we hope that it makes you, help improves your health. Fermented foods generally contain both probiotics, hopefully, if they're not contaminated. Sometimes you might get a bad batch. I've known people have gotten bad batches of fermented foods, and it's made them very sick because, you can get contamination. Even with probiotic supplements, you can sometimes get contamination, unwanted contamination too, and it made people ill of bacteria or organisms that you don't want them to ingest that tend to be more opportunistic. But fermented foods are generally full of prebiotic foods and probiotics, and your diet most of the time, unless you're eating fermented foods, is primarily just full of prebiotics. Now granted, if you're eating a raw salad, there's going to be some microorganisms on that to some degree. If you cook something and eat it right then and there, if you cook it thoroughly, generally the bacterial or microorganism load on it is very low, except in milk and dairy, where Mycobacterium avium paratuberculosis can survive pasteurization and homogenization. It can survive that. But in general, most of the food that you're eating is mainly just contains prebiotics and doesn't really contain a lot of microorganisms on it to some degree. Like if you eat something raw, it's going to have a lot more microorganisms on it than if you eat something that's cooked, which is, there's pros and cons for that. If it's a good bacteria, it'll help you out. If it's opportunistic, like spinach being contaminated with salmonella or E. coli from farm runoff, then it's very bad. But those are the differences between diet, prebiotics, probiotics, and fermented foods. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.